You'll hear the music, and then we'll be live and recording after that.
1 minute until showtime.
By the way, I've been selling your book for about 10 years.
Oh, that's good.
I think I bought it from Tex Mars before he stopped talking to me.
Yeah, I don't really talk to him either, so...
Yeah, I did a show and ran an article in my magazine about Pauline Christianity. And suggested that maybe the reason he fell off his donkey on the road to Damascus because he realized he could control the Christians rather than just killing them as a Pharisee that he was.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Love Talk Radio.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order.
The new world order does not mean surrendering our national sovereignty or forfeiting our interests.
And if you'll buy that...
He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
How can I convince you when your ears refuse to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time that I draw near. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they glance away in fear.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
Well, it's just a show. How can I contain this anger and pain? Knowing that your eyes are blinded by the lies.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
Blinded by the lies.
Catch the Free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger will contain me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon out of the sky and drop the sun.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamericans.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-998-6121.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I'm your host. I am Clay Douglas. My guest today is Andrew Carrington Hitchcock. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Oh, hi, Clay. How you going? Okay?
Well, I'm doing quite well, sir, and I'm very happy and honored to have you on my show. I've been selling your book, The Synagogue of Satan, through the Free American for probably about 15 years. I believe you've been around that long, haven't you?
Well, mine only actually came out in 2006 originally, and I printed about, but I was putting it up on a website called IamTheWitness.com, a Dale Bradford Smith website. He used to be a host on GCN and RBN. He doesn't really do any shows these days, and it was just a timeline that kept getting bigger and bigger, and in the end I printed my own book, set up just a one-page website in the fall of 2006, and printed 500 copies, and then I sent it to different people as well, like Tex Mars was one, just to sort of promote the book, and he ended up picking it up and publishing it, and that was when it got a lot more well known, I guess, and then since then I updated it as well, and now the Tex Mars version, there's another version that's 2.5 times as long. It's got all the protocols of Zion in it. It's got excerpts from every Henry Ford International Jew story in it, and it's taken up to the end of 2011 rather than the middle of 2006, so it covers all the banking crisis and what have you. So yeah, it's been a journey, and but it's just about getting the truth out there, and I don't see myself writing another book because of the nature of what I write. It's really this timeline format. So what I try to do these days is just keep people up to date on. I have a Facebook and Twitter that I try and post something each day on, and then go from there.
Well, it's nice to see that you're still alive. When I 20 years ago, I was outraged by what happened at Waco. And yeah. I went out and started, I did 3 things. I started this radio show. I started my magazine called The Free American, which was in the bookstores, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, for 10 years. And I started the militia in New Mexico, in the governor's office, not exactly a terrorist organization. And I immediately came under attack by the ADL and by Southern Poverty Law, and I really had no idea at that time why they were coming after this old Texas biker. You know, I really didn't understand it. It's like, what part of the Second Amendment don't you understand? And then I started researching, and I started reading not only just what you mentioned, the protocols of the elders of Zion, and of course, if you mention the protocols of the elders of Zion in mixed company, the Jew in the room stands up and says, "Don't you know that's a forgery? Oh, that's a forgery!" What? I see. What's a forgery? Oh, yeah, the exact copy of the original.
Exactly.
And what does it matter who wrote it, whether it was a bunch of Aborigines sitting around a campfire in Australia, or a bunch of rabbis in Israel, or Palestine? I don't like to call it Israel, but they're dead. They're dead now. So what matters about the protocols is who is somebody using that to create a one world government under Satan? Seems like it to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and that's a really good take on it, Clay. That people are so worried all the time about attributing it to these people, to these Jews and what have you. But as you say, people that put it together are dead. But it's when you, rather than they'll jump up and say it's a forgery. As you say, firstly, a forgery is a copy of an original, and secondly, you just need to go through these one by one. And you can see this is exactly what's happening today, and the people that are benefiting from it are the Jews in elite positions of power. They are the people that benefit from it. It's not, if all these things were happening and it was the blacks that were benefiting, or the Mexicans and what have you, but these two groups are just the soldiers for the Jew, because they're brought into white nations in order to basically they're the replacement population. They're there to interbreed with the white women, and so 2-3 generations down the line, you'll be hard pushed to find a pure white race person in any of the white nations today.
Now, I published a book 10 years ago. I referred to, in my magazine, I put a picture, building number 7 on the cover, along with Larry Silverstein's quote. and I referred to it on the air as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning.
Yeah.
And they tried to kill me over that.
Yeah.
Israeli firms tapped our phones. That story broke in New York Times in July. My magazine came out in March. In April, the New York Times released a story George Bush allowed the NSA to tap everybody's phones. We know they've done a little bit more than that thanks to Snowden, but that was Israeli companies that were doing the tapping. So they tapped my phone and they arranged an accident. When the accident on my motorcycle didn't kill me, they rushed me to the hospital and kept me drugged for 3 months in 3 hospitals, ran up a $750,000 hospital bill, and fed me Halcyon, Haldol, Valium, and morphine. I guess the only mistake they made was trying to overdose an old biker. You know, probably ain't gonna happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a terrible story what they did, and I'm familiar with. I remember seeing the original notification that went out that I think a member of your family had said that you've been involved in an accident, and it didn't look like you were going to pull through initially. And but yeah, that's the trouble with these people. They really something that happened to me recently. I don't know if I sent it to you, but there was a World Jewish Congress letter that went from the Vice President of the World Jewish Congress to Amazon asking them to take my book off Amazon. And I'm like, well, it just goes to show how evil these people are. They've got the whole media sewn up. They've got the whole banking sewn up. They've got the politicians all sewn up, but they can't allow one book out there that they don't like. And this is how evil they are, and this is why you know. And the hypocrisy, they go on about all the Nazis, they burned books and all this, and they're doing the exact same thing. But of course,
is it possible? Let me ask you about that, because we've got so-called patriot hosts on here, and I'd be willing to bet you've never been on the Alex Jones show.
Oh, absolutely. This is an issue that's always been a sticking point between me and Tex Mars, because I've said to them, you know, I've only ever actually spoken to Tex once, and that was when we did an interview. He's got a nice staff, and I speak to different members of his staff. I get on quite well with them. But I have put the question to him directly about Alex Jones not pinning anything on the Jew, and about Alex Jones having a Jewish wife and subsequently Jewish kids.
Well, it's a little worse than that. It's a little worse than that. I have the video up on my Free American site that... and by the way, you know, I have a book out too, and it's got I probably tapped into your history of the Rothschilds. I had a chapter of that in my book, Mystery Babylon: The New World Order Unveiled.
Okay.
I simply couldn't find any better resource than given the history of these evil people.
Yeah.
And I've got on my website now Alex Jones taking a call from somebody that talks about the protocols of the elders, talks about the evil bankers, I call them banksters, and all of a sudden Alex got all uptight and started yelling, well, I'm Jewish.
Really?
Yeah, and I thought, well, that pretty well explains why you've never talked to me since I asked him at breakfast one day. I had him on my I had him on one of my expos that I put on in Texas. I let him speak, let him have a booth there, and I said, Alex, did it ever occur to you that maybe your wife was your handler? He never talked to me again.
Really? Yeah.
But that's the way they do it. I mean, they put the Monica Lewinskys in there, and you know, they use their women to control. And of course, if the woman gets pregnant by you, now whether Alex is Jewish or not, his children certainly are.
Yeah, and it always goes through this is another reason why you know that the Jews aren't the Israel of the Bible, because there's so many elements that they don't follow. For example, you have to be born of a Jewish mother to be Jewish. It doesn't matter who the father is. Whereas in the Bible it's always preached, you know, don't take their women for your sons, don't give your women to their sons, etc., etc. And then it goes through, when it goes through the genealogical line, and it goes all the way from Adam down through to Jesus Christ through Mary and what have you, and it's always going down the male line. And the Jews always go through the female line, and other things the Jews promote. They promote race mixing like it's going out of style, and my understanding is that, of course, you've got that mentioned, I think 30 odd times in the Old Testament at least, about not going with other races, etc. And even the adultery, you know, thou shalt not commit adultery, was actually thou shalt not adulterate. And it's not just restricted to mixing with other races and having children with other races. I mean, it even goes as far as not to mix the fibres of the clothing and things like that. It really, I studied all these laws in Scripture, and some of them really are, you find them quite bizarre, to be honest. But what stands out time and time again is what the Jews preach and what's actually in there, and they're generally opposite, and so they can't be who they claim to be.
Now, well, technically, we should probably call them Edomites, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, I just find it interesting the way that what I tried to do as well was, when I went through laws, I also put laws out of their Talmud, because we all know they follow a Talmud more than anything else, and so I could show people, right, well, this is what they say, that they follow the Old Testament. Now look at the Talmud, and then I put that in with that law, and it's like, well, no, this isn't right. This is complete opposite again, the things that are going on, it's just shocking at the moment, the way that our society has been turned up and down. I do turn, you know, I go on about race today probably more than anything else, and the reason is, and I'll just, you know, I'll sum it up how I see it. I mean, I was walking through London probably a couple of weeks ago, and there's an area called Soho that I have to walk through to get to Oxford Circus, and this is where you've got, it's like the red light area, sex shops, what have you. And I walk through there between Covent Garden and Oxford Street, because that's how you cut through to, it's about sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to start going up to London on my own when I was about 13, 14. I used to be very into music, buying and selling records, etc., going around second-hand record shops. And there was, I'd see, yeah, I'd go around that area, because you used to get these sort of, that sort of hip, whatever type place. You'd always have like a second-hand record shop here and there and what have you. Now that time, 20, 25 years ago, if you saw a woman stood around with tattoos, white woman, and then nearby there was a black guy, you'd think, oh, well, that's a whore and that's a pimp. Now if you see that same woman today walking with a black guy, you'll be saying, oh, that's the local primary school teacher and that's her husband. And that is my exact point. This is in such a short time what they've reduced us to. And they've made it not just, it's become the norm. You know, it's the norm for people to do these things. And both of those things are said in the Bible. Now, I know a lot of people listening are going to have tattoos. I'm not saying, oh, this is terrible, what have you. What I'm telling you is, in the Bible, another law says not to pierce or mark the flesh. Now, my point is that what can't be argued is there's a big push in media and fashion for everyone to get tattoos everywhere, everybody. And there's also a big push for people to do all this racial integration. And if you don't, you're a hater. It never crosses people's minds that actually they're the haters, because what they're doing is writing out the blacks and all the other races, because in the end you're just going to have a hybrid there. And you have to ask yourself, why do they want to do this? What is their purpose? Why is it so important to them to do this, because they don't do anything for our health. They never have done anything for our health. They've only ever done things to ruin our health. And so people
they are destroyers, and they brag about, we are destroyers.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, I'm sorry to labour on this point, Clay, but all my research I've gone so. If you'd have told me when I wrote the Synagogue of Satan that there was anything to do with religion, I was largely atheistic at that point. I called it the Synagogue of Satan because they said, beware of those who say they are Jews but are not, but are the Synagogue of Satan. And I thought, oh, that's the Khazars. And that's why I called it the Synagogue of Satan, you see, because right up until that point, it was just the history of the House of Rothschild. And of course, the Rothschild family is a small element of it because it covers everything from the USS Liberty, Kennedy, 9/11, all sorts of things. Some of the biggest information I put in the updated version I found purely by accident. I was invited on a holiday to Las Vegas, and I didn't drink, I didn't gamble or anything like that. So it was a case of, well, why would you go there? But I was invited over there for a short holiday, and I was quite interested in things I'd heard about it. I'd seen films about it, so I read a load of books about it. And one book that I read, called Supermob by Gus Russo, about this mafia lawyer called Sidney Korshak, who was Jewish. And it shows all the, I mean, people always say, yeah, the mafia was all, you know, Las Vegas set up by the mafia. Yeah, it was all the Jewish mafia that set it up. And then you find the links between these people and the administration, the Roosevelt administration through Truman and what have you, and how they were put in charge of taking businesses off the nice side, the Japanese people, and then they were taking them off them and they were selling them to their friends at pennies on the dollar. And then when these Japanese, in the mid to late, I think mid-80s, Ronald Reagan gave them reparations of $20,000 each. And if the Jews had got that, they'd be absolutely up in arms, because these people had all their businesses and everything taken off them, so the 20,000 didn't even cover the cost of what they'd lost at the time, never mind for inflation. But you never hear that story. You never hear the Japanese reparations. You never hear how the Jews in America were in charge of taking the Japanese property and giving it out to their friends. It's not people's fault because they don't hear it. Because I found that out by accident. I was reading the book about Las Vegas because I was going on holiday, and then just by chance this comes up. I'm thinking, whatever I read, I can't get away from this subject, you know. So I documented all that, and I did further research on it, and I never had a plan to update the Synagogue of Satan. But when I finished In the Name of Yahweh earlier than I planned, I'd always kept a little dossier of stuff, and I started putting it in. I thought, well, I'll stick the protocols in and what have you as well, and it made for a better book, because it kind of, when you have two bites, it's unlikely you get two bites of a cherry at a book. Generally, you finish your book and you think, oh, I wish I'd have put that in, I wish I'd have put that in, I wish I'd have done that differently. But I guess because it had done well, and it gave me the opportunity then to revert back to self-publishing, so it goes on Amazon, it's available on Kindle and iBooks and other things as well. But it means that I've got control over it now, so the Tex Miles version's still out there because he's legally entitled to sell it until he wishes to stop selling it. But this new updated version is only sold by me through, you know, my publisher, my self-publisher, and Amazon and what have you.
Well, the Jews do control the movie industry. They do control the television, the radio. It was and I believe it's in your book that the Rothschilds bought Reuters in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yeah, and the AP as well. So they got control of both of them. And the point is we always hear, you'll be familiar with the Lenin. It was the Lenin or Stalin. People attribute it differently. It's not who votes, it's who counts the votes. Well, I've got a saying of my own about the news. It's not the news, it's who puts out the news. Now, these are news agencies, and so all the papers and what have you go to them for their stories. The stories will go up on there, and then they decide what they put in the newspapers, what they put on the internet. So if they just want to tell you about who some slut is sleeping with, so-called celebrity or what have you, then that's what they'll tell you. If they want to tell you about what's really going on this round, then that's what they'll tell you. But it's all about not what is news, but who controls the news. And this has been the problem all the way through. It's always been about control, and I've learned over time that there's no match, if you like, for experience as I've got older, and I've gone too fast with certain things, and I thought, oh, I've got the story here and what have you, but as time goes on, more and more things you wake up to. And it's like with yourself, you came into this, you said around the time of Waco, you got your awakening. I was a bit later, the Oklahoma bombing, and the reason that I woke up then was a very simple one, that I saw the footage on the television over in England, and we've, especially living in London, we've had all these IRA bombs going off all the time and what have you, and so you get to see, you get used to seeing the aftermath of a bombing, if you like. And it was so obvious to me that that building had been blown out by something quite professional, and they tried to make out that a truck bomb parked out had caused that damage when it was obviously blown out. Even to someone like myself without a particular background in physics, it's obvious the thing was blown out. It couldn't possibly have had that damage done to it. And then there was this guy, and he put together some show. There was a guy called John Ronson, who's a Jew, and he put together a show on Channel 4 called The Secret Rulers of the World. And it was all done very light. He was a bit snidey with different people. I think that he might have, he certainly interviewed David Icke and Alex Jones. I don't know if Tex Mars popped up at some point, but, you know, it was going from one to the other and making sort of snide remarks and stuff, trying to make out that all this stuff was nonsense, but at the same time putting things out there that made it look like there was validity to the story that he was then going to refute. But all it did was it kind of backfired on the Jews, because it made people investigate it more and more, and that's what kind of drove me from there. And I didn't have a computer at that time, that's probably 97, 98, and then got my own computer, started doing my own research, and then went from there. And I just listened to a lot of radio shows, a lot of people like yourself I didn't get into until later on, because I thought, oh, it's all RBN and GCN and that's all you need. And of course they're the people that are diverting you. And it's people like yourself that you've got to find, but it's very difficult to find.
Yes, they made it hard. I mean, one of my good friends was Bill Cooper, and Bill and I were meeting, and we just lived about 200 miles apart. And I went to visit him several times. He sent his wife and child out of the country because he knew they were going to come after him, and we just talked about putting our magazines together. He was publishing Veritas, I was publishing the Free American, and we talked about it on my AT&T phone, and 2 weeks later he was dead. They killed him. They set him up.
And that's amazing that you I didn't know that you were friends with him. I certainly, one of the first books I read, I found it on the internet, the sort of Secret Weapons for Quiet Wars that he put at the start of Behold a Pale Horse, and it was one of the first, if not the first book I bought that I could say was a conspiracy book, from going from listening to radio show after radio show, because it used to be RBN, GCN, you'd be buying a book every day if you were listening to that, because it was just people on there just promoting book all the time. And you were like, well, they can't all be right, because they've got conflicting opinions. But there was something, the thing about William Cooper that I saw, and he had been in it for a while. And I struggled with, because I'm still this alien stuff that was in there. I kind of, it's difficult. I don't want to. I'm not sure if they are aliens or if they're another smokescreen to try and divert us. Or it's really, but either way, it's a bit like arguing the whether planes brought down the World Trade Center or whether it was they were holograms or what have you. The fact is what's more interesting is not how they did it, but who did it and why they did. Basically, who did it?
Well,
so they
there was
to justice.
There was Rabbi Dov Zakheim, the guy that lost $2.6 trillion, couldn't find it at the Pentagon, and who controlled the company that built the remote control planes. So,
yeah. Exactly.
Also,
and,
one of the authors, Dov Zakheim was also one of the authors of the Project for the New American Century, which is, another plan for world domination, how they're going to use the United States to replace England as the empire on which the sun never sets.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because, I mean, it's difficult because, I mean, I see us all as being, in these white European countries, America, Australia, white South Africa, that we're all together, we're all in the same race there. But of course England has been up to so much evil in the world because they started off as the Jews' henchmen. This was they started off with their central bank in Amsterdam, but they quickly decided that they were going to make their central point of operations the City of London. And they got round Cromwell, the actual edict of expulsion for the Jews that was, I think, Edward II in 1290, that's still in place. So the Jews shouldn't actually be here. They're committing treason by being in this country. But Oliver Cromwell, couldn't get it overturned in 1648, and so they're still here because he just said, we'll just ignore it. So basically, we've got a leader, a prime minister who's part Jewish, so he's here illegally. We've got the leader of the opposition, Labour Party, who's completely Jewish. He's illegally in this country because they choose not to. They just enforce the laws that they wish to enforce. But that happens worldwide. But yeah, I'd like to say, I don't feel I can. There's a guy that you interviewed. I heard a show that you did with him. He's this guy that used to train Green Berets and people like that.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure.
He sends out Crescent and Cross with Mark Glenn. He's a retired army colonel or something that used to train Green Berets. But basically, I heard a show you did with him.
Gordon Duff is the runs Veterans Today, but he was a Marine, so.
No, it's not him. He's quite radical. It's very, very anti-Jewish. He puts out sort of you get him every couple of weeks. You'll get like an email. I just can't think of his name. It might come to mind, but he served over in the UK and basically second to him behind Jews, the worst people on earth, were the British, and he claimed to absolutely hate them, and they were pompous and all that, and that may well have been what he experienced in the military. But I can assure you, in sort of travelling to different places and what have you, you do have differences with like French and English and Italian and what have you. But and with Americans as well. But we are closer than I believe. Blacks and whites or Indians and whites. I believe that an Englishman, an American, or an Englishman and a Frenchman, what have you, would actually be closer in nature.
One of my friends, Eli James, who is the co-author of my book Mystery Babylon: The New World Order Unveiled.
Okay.
He's a Christian identity pastor, and according to him, we were the tribe of Judah, we were the tribe of Dan, and we crossed the Caucasus Mountains to get out of slavery in Syria, and they started calling us Caucasians. Some of us turned left and went into Germany and to Denmark and to England. And, I don't have any problem. Some of us turned right and went over to to Russia. So,
yeah.
And the whole Khazarian thing, I mean, I think we're seeing that recreated right now because they went after the Christians in the Ukraine in World War II, as well as all of the white Christian Russians, and Lenin, Stalin, and Marx, both the Bolsheviks, murdered 60 million white Christians, and we don't, somehow that doesn't make it into our history books, does it?
No, exactly. And I remember you had one of the John Kaminsky shows, and he said America decided to side with Russia against Germany. Russia, who inexplicably had killed 60 million of its own citizens, but America decided that they're the good guys. And of course, England was on their side too, just against Germany. And it was, it's just absolute nonsense. But again, unless you find something on the internet or you read one of the Solzhenitsyn books on this subject, and the last one he couldn't even get a translator for in America because all the publishing houses were Jewish, and he went further than ever. I think there's a third volume. I don't know if he finally got it translated or not, but they were so scared after the first two. I don't know the outcome, but yeah, this story is well known. It's well known. It's like in these countries where you look at somewhere like Iran, and if you actually look at images from Iran and actually what their culture and what have you is like, they've got a situation, and the same as they had in Libya and Iraq, where the people do love their leaders, and in Syria, that's why this guy's still getting in. They love their leaders because they don't have a big central bank bleeding them all for money, benefiting the Jews. And that's why we're going into all these countries for the Jew. And what we should be doing is getting rid of the Jew. And the Jew is not just a few people at the top, because if it was, then just by expelling them from one country after another over 1,000 years that we did, we wouldn't have the problem. They collectively get involved together. It doesn't mean every Jew is worth the money that the head Rothschild is worth, but the fact is that what I suggest to people is, if you want to see what Jews really are about, Nahum Goldman, a president of, I believe, the World Jewish Congress for about 30 or 40 years, I think he said in 1978, I hardly exaggerate, Jewish life consists of two elements: extracting money and protesting. And that's basically what they do. Any field that they're involved in is designed to extract the biggest amount of money for the lowest possible effort. And any time they don't like something, you just have a look online at some of the reviews for my book, and you look at all the one-star ones, and you on Amazon, I'm saying now, and it'll be one line, oh, anti-Semitic, oh, and then you look at the name behind it. This isn't Mr. Rothschild there. This is some Jew who basically has seen the Synagogue of Satan, and it's in there, it's ingrained in their psyche. In the same way, if you or I lost a job, the first thing we'd do is try and find another one. The first thing a black person would do is go down the welfare office. You see, we think that we'll get another job straight away, but all they think is, oh no, I need welfare. It's the same with the Jew. As soon as they see something, right, how can I protest about this? How can I shout about this? And it's this constant insanity that they've got in their minds that they can't possibly allow the Holocaust story to come out now, because they couldn't say that they got it wrong, because so many of them, you rarely meet a Jew that hasn't got a relative that died in the Holocaust. I don't think I've ever met one that didn't have a relative, and that goes to show that they're all lying, because quite frankly, we know what the figures are for the Holocaust, and they just use that lie as a means of, whenever you say about Jewish supremacism, oh, you want another Holocaust. Well, what I want is immaterial. But of course, a lot of people, if someone says that to them, they'll be like, no, I don't, oh, it's best I won't mention it in the future then. And so that's the way that they 99% of the white race have been brought up to believe that they're an abusive race that of kicked Jews out of countries without any provocation whatsoever. So never asked the reasons why they were kicked out. That put blacks into slavery and then promptly beat them senseless every day, which is absolute nonsense, because you don't beat your car senseless every day, otherwise it might not start and get you to work. These slaves were looked after, and a lot of them, there's all sorts of things on the internet. I personally wouldn't like being a slave, but there are things on the internet, quotes from these families that were upset when slavery became abandoned because they preferred being slaves.
I have said and told my audience that they have really refined the art of slavery to the point the slave don't know they're slaves. I'm not a slave, man. I can go get my pickup and go get a beer. Watch. Yeah. I'm not a slave. It's called economic slavery, and that's what they've done to me. They have tried to. They couldn't kill me. They weren't successful at killing me. They tried 3 times over the last 10 years. So they went after my businesses. Every stock I had, one of my magazines sold to a publicly traded company, and somebody with enough resources contacted every stockholder in the company to tell them how anti-Semitic I was.
Yeah. Oh, that's what they do. Right, there was a guy in this country who I read who was in the sort of late 60s, 1970s. It was a guy called John Tyndall, and he was a leader of the National Front in this country, which is a nationalist organisation that's now largely been replaced by the British National Party, and it's got that Nick Griffin in charge, and I don't trust them at all now, or that guy, but certainly John Tyndall I had a lot of time for. He wrote a very good book about literally his journey from how he became a nationalist himself and what he'd found out along the way. And he actually said, and for him, that I know someone who knows his wife, and she actually read my book. He'd already passed away by that point, and she said that he was waking up to the Jewish problem towards the end, but he'd attacked all the immigration and what they were doing there. But the interesting thing is that he actually says in that book, I think it's called The 11th Hour, he recounts the story of an activist who was he was in touch with, and basically some Jews have found out that he was involved with the National Front, and they deliberately phoned up his employer to get him fired. And that was, and he just said in this book, he said, you know, why do they just get such pleasure in that? Why can't they just have it out with him? But that's the way they operate. They are evil. They're pure evil. They go into Palestinians' houses, and they don't just, if there's a Palestinian terrorist, they take the whole family out. You know, that's the way that their minds work. They are a parasite. They are the Synagogue of Satan. They are the DNA of Satan, in my opinion, each and every one of them.
It's kind of interesting. You know, for 2,000 years we've been scratching our head, wondering what do you mean the mark of the beast? What could that be? What could that be? Well, you pointed out pretty clear with the 6-pointed star. You got 6 points, 6 triangles, and you know, another 6 there somewhere.
6 sectors.
Yeah. So for now we've got the technology, and here was maybe one of the good Jews, Aaron Russo, talking with Rockefeller, who told him 9/11 was going to happen, told him we were going to invade Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria, and also told him that their plan was to put a chip in everybody's hand, so they could, and if you don't do what you're supposed to, we'll just turn off your chip and you won't be able to buy or sell. So well, 2,000 years we got they predicted this, and now it's happening.
Well, I've read that the Obamacare is going to be involved with chip, isn't it?
Yes, they've got that planned. That's part of it in there. And you talked about the race mixing. I've said Obama is the perfect New World Order leader.
Yeah.
He's black, he's white, he's Christian, he's Jewish, he's Muslim. So he's got all religions, all colors in there, and he's gay and living with a man they call the First Lady.
I know, you just couldn't make it up. I mean, it's just, you see, people ask me, you know, why do they do things like this? Because they're insane and they're evil. And they love the idea that they've had all these stupid white people, mainly younger people, maybe my generation or younger generation, because they're all brought up under communism now. They're taught all the communist doctrines of their school. We're all equal, we're all, you know, being white is racist. You shouldn't be, all this sort of nonsense that they're being taught. And so they think a black president is like the greatest thing they could ever have in the whole world. They'd have elected Eldridge Cleaver to the post if they'd have had the choice. Now, the point is that the Jews behind the scenes who know this, they just get a kick out the fact that not only have they elected a guy who's mainly Jewish, because he's Jewish through his mother,
right,
and he looks black, but they've also elected a homosexual who's married to a transgender. And I put something on my website the other day, and I couldn't believe this, because I've seen this woman before, that Joan Rivers, and she's getting out of a car and someone's talking to her about some gay wedding she's just officiated over. I mean, I didn't realise that she had any, but presumably just being a Jewess, you know, you can officiate over evil. And they said to her, so how do you feel about, do you think it'll be long before we have a gay person in the White House? She said, yeah, we already do, Obama. He said that he's married to a tranny. And they said, what? He said, oh, a tranny, a transgender. Yeah, that's, you know, first lady's a man. And the way she said it, she's getting out, she was like, you know, just brushing people away. She wasn't saying it like a joke. She was like, you know, I don't really want to be talking to reporters, so I'll just say something controversial. But this has been, you know, if this is the first time people have heard this, they're going to think, yeah, this is insane stuff. Well, go onto the internet and do a search, First Lady as a Man. There's a 25-minute video.
Actually, it's easier to do than that. You go to Facebook, Free American 69, and you can see the whole video, along with the little notice there that Obama just wrote an executive order offering protection to transgenders. I guess that's so they won't come and take his male wife away.
I mean, but you see, the reason that they do this, it's the same reason that the Jews, I mean, I firmly believe that they've got the weapons that they could just, you know, kill us off one way or another. They've got DNA-specific bio-weapons, all sorts of things. But, you know, we always say, if what you and I have found out, for example, imagine what they haven't told us, what isn't in the public domain, you know, that they're really keeping under wraps. But Jews are inherently evil. They don't want to just like flick a switch and wipe us out. They want us to suffer in the worst way possible. In the same way with the Russians, they waited years to get the Russians back because they blocked them at the Congress of Vienna from taking control of Europe then. After the Napoleonic Wars, and it was vetoed, and Rothschild wasn't at all happy about it, and he swore that he'd get revenge, him or his descendants would get revenge, and of course 100 years later they did with the Russian Revolution, and they didn't stop at the royal family, they had to wipe out the 60 million that we've already discussed. But my point is that what they want to do now is they want to get us to wipe ourselves out. And it says in the Bible, and the reason I got involved and interested in the scripture clay was there were so many elements that pointed to, when you look at Revelation, for example, there's a line in Revelation about basically in the white nations there's going to be multitudes and races and tongues that are swamping the white nations, or nations of Israel. Well, what do we have today? You know, all the white nations are being pumped full of immigrants, and you look up someone like Barbara Lerner-Spector online, and she's proudly speaking in Sweden about how Europe will die if it doesn't become multicultural and all this, and they're lobbying in places like Sweden to get their immigration laws relaxed so they can, because there's too many of these pretty white women out there, and they think it's time that they should breed with some black bucks so there aren't any white people left. But this is exactly what they do. They don't just want to kill us, they want us to breed ourselves out. And so at the end of it, we're committing sin as well, because it says about the race mixing, and it also says that if you do not listen to God's words, he will not listen to you. And so you won't get the blessings, you'll get the cursings. And that's why in all these the white nations, we have been so disadvantaged. We've been the most persecuted race in history. You look at what's happened in South Africa to the white South Africans. You know, they're the ones living in shanty towns now. It's unbelievable. And they're getting raped and all sorts of things out there, and the police do nothing, because it's like, you deserve it, you oppressed us. No, they built that nation. If the whites hadn't have gone over there, South Africa would just be like a mud hole like the rest of Africa. The only black history that exists is black history in white countries, because you can't have history if you don't have culture and if you don't have language, and they've had neither, unless they've been dragged up by the white race and then allowed to use what the white race has created. And that, you can see that if you go to America, you can see it in Europe, and it just goes on and on and on. And all you get told is, we need to pay them reparations now, we need to give them this, we need to give them welfare, we need to do this. Well, if they're so equal, then why can't they achieve without laws having to be changed to adjust the state of play in their favour? You know, it's like
why Israel is just scared to death that they're going to be called apartheid, and they're more apartheid than South Africa ever was. J.B. Campbell was just on my show Friday, I believe. Yes, Friday, and he fought in Rhodesia. He fought, which became Zimbabwe after they defeated the white folks, and then they're killing white folks in South Africa. White farmers, all the white farmers are being murdered and taken out in both those countries.
Yeah, exactly. And Zimbabwe, I saw a recent article actually, and Mugabe saying that no whites are allowed to own land in this country. What I always ask, and funny enough, I was chatting to a white South African woman recently, and I couldn't believe what was coming out of her mouth, because I thought I might have actually met someone here who understood my point of view, but she'd been so liberalised that I just had to walk away in the end, because I just couldn't handle it. It was, so if I fell in love with a black man, how could that be wrong? And I'm like, well, you should be in the same environment in the first place, and you shouldn't allow yourself to get into that situation. I didn't have to read all this stuff, and I wasn't brought up in the Ku Klux Klan either. It was just obvious to me, you know, from an early age, that I didn't have any issues with people of other races or colours that I'd see at school or what have you, but you stuck to your own. You know, it never crossed my mind to look at a girl of a different race for the purpose of having a family or something like that. And it was just something, you know, presumably I was born very racist. You know, that's the way that people would say now, and I need to be adjusted so that I don't think that. But no, you see what happens. They talk all the time about hate crime and racism, but they're the most racist towards the white race, because they go into your country and they make you change your way of life to suit them. And there's never been an immigrant of any nation into a white nation that hasn't gone there, in my opinion, for economic reasons. I even go as far as to the slave trade, because these slaves were given country like Liberia where they could go and move to, but they chose to stay in America because they knew they were going to get a better deal there, the New Deal or the Jew Deal. And this is my point when I talk about black history, because it's very sad that the opportunities have been given to them for so many years that all you've got now is the knockout game, and it's just this get whitey type of business. And you and I can shout this sort of thing from the rooftops, but people can only help themselves. And it's very sad, the situation that we've come to, but I'm sick of avoiding the subject. I'll tell people now, and if they don't like it, well, that's fine. But I don't just talk about my book anymore, because it's there for people to read, and they can read it for free, the original version on my site. But they really need to wake up to this business, because they think they've been brought up with this white guilt, and they think that the best way they can repair it is by miscegenation. But actually, you're just playing directly into the Jews' hands, and there's not going to be any of us left in a couple of generations. I don't.
Well, now, have you studied the whole Schofield Bible thing? This is Jews paying Schofield to do the addendums to try to make us believe, to try to make white Christians believe that, well, Jesus was a Jew. Don't you know Jesus was a Jew? No, he wasn't. He was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white man, according to Pontius Pilate.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all, you see, people only read headlines, Clay. You know, it's like we all came from Adam and Eve. No, it says clearly in the preceding chapter that men and women were created before Adam and Eve, but Adam and Eve were special people that had the life breathed into them and stuff. And so then you're like, well, this is a different race.
I got kicked out of Sunday school when I was about 7 years old for asking, well, who did Adam and Eve's children marry? Who did Cain and Abel marry? Where did their wives come from?
Yeah, exactly.
Get him out now. You know, you're out of our Sunday school.
Because you're right about that. You see, the thing is, when I did my study, and I was liaising with different people as well, but there's an element of presumption, because you know, for example, that Cain didn't procreate with any of, anything in the garden because he was kicked out immediately after.
I have another question for you, and hopefully we can cover this before you have to go. You're welcome to stay as long as you want and go whenever you have to. But why would God not want Adam and Eve to know the difference between good and evil?
Well, again, this is the problem. I think you mentioned this before, and this is an issue that I have, because I find that the reason I got into doing the kind of the summing up and picking out the bullet points and proving Israel was the white race and the Jews were from Cain and what have you, was to show people today who really was who, not what they were being told. But I couldn't answer that question, Clay. It's one of those things that people could always come to you and say, well, who created God? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I think that John Kaminski came out with a good point saying, people created God. But what I do find is the reason I started, I guess I was listening to a few different shows and people come out with different Bible verses and what have you, and I heard more and more and more in the same way that I was hearing more and more about the conspiracy stuff. And I got a chronological Bible. I got a King James Bible in chronological format, so I could do my research in a chronological format. Otherwise, I'd have got lost, with the some books. It's all right in the early Old Testament, but then all the Gospels and that, they're all like overlapping each other, and they're telling the same story, but from their own point of view. And I wouldn't have known where I was. But I went through it like that, and I just found some of these laws are absolutely bizarre. It's not the Ten Commandments. There's 759 laws, statutes, and ordinances and judgments for breaking those in the Bible. But the problem, as I say, that I found was, not all of those laws. I can't look at it and say, well, that's ideal, and I agree with that, or I agree with that. But I think you're better off following the bulk of those than you are following what we're told today. And as I say, it doesn't make sense to me, because as soon as the tree of knowledge, that was essentially sexual intercourse, and so how were they going to be a race if they were never going to have sexual intercourse? For me, I think it was all predestined, and it was, and this is again so basically God's decided to create the white race, Adam and Eve, and he's decided that he'll let Satan go in there, and he's decided he'll let Satan seduce Eve, and so there'll be a race of Jews, and then there'll be a race between Adam and Eve, and there'll be Seth and what have you. And this is where it doesn't talk about the women, so you have to assume that they procreated with the women in the garden, because the race was pure enough to be able to do that at that point. And that's where the white race essentially came down from, and Cain went out with the other people, which is why all Jews are mongrelized. But my point is that why did he have to do that in the first place? It's almost like we're on a big television set for God's amusement. You know, in my darker periods of time, I reflect on it that way, and I think, well, you know, okay, so God's done all this, so there's going to be a perpetual war between the children of Satan and the children of God. You know, why not? Why just allow that to keep happening? What is the? And then you end up running into, well, what is life itself? Have we come down here and we've taken this form to see how we progress, and do we return, or are we constantly learning? It's difficult to know, but what we can find out is by people's actions who they're representing. And I believe, certainly, I would be a fool to say that every white person I've ever met is wonderful, because I've met people of other colours and races that are far nicer than a lot of white people that I've met, but that's not the point. There should be good and bad in every race, and it's up to that race to sort out the good and bad in each race.
Yeah, I got approached at a high-rise apartment party by a big, muscular black guy. He says, "How do you feel about us black folks?" And we were about eye level. He might have had a little bit more muscle than I did, but I looked him in the eye and I said, "Well, I got to be real straight with you, brother. I don't like niggers, white or black, white or black."
Yeah.
Oh, you might be okay too. You know, yeah, you might be okay too. I just wouldn't get in my face like that again.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, and this is the whole point. You see, I want to make it clear, from my point of view, people...
Hold on, we got to take a quick break here. If you can stay with me, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
We'll be right back with after the station identification. Warm up that coffee.
What's really going on in the world that mainstream media won't tell you. At Truth Radio, you can listen live or listen to a large selection of archived programs. TruthRadio.com. The truth is out.
If you've always wanted to understand a little bit more about law, but not make a deep study of it enough that you would get a degree or be admitted to the bar, but you'd still like to know just a little bit more than you have earlier learned, here's the perfect solution for you. We have received a number of copies of a booklet entitled Our American Common Law. This booklet is written by Howard Fisher and Dale Pond. If you'd like a copy, this just under 30 pages will really give you a practical grasp of what the common law is and how it fits into your daily affairs as it relates to courts and jurisprudence. Our address is Post Office Box 344, Nipomo, California, code 93444. No price. Just donate to Truth Radio. We'll send it to you. Thanks. Looking forward to hearing from you soon.
All right. My guest today is Andrew Carrington Hitchcock, and you're sure. I know you got another show to do at the top of the next hour, so you're welcome to stay as long as you can here, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm just. I'll probably stay another 20 minutes. It's more that I'm going on the same Skype phone, and I'm worried that the battery might not last the two shows, so I thought I might have to cut it down a bit. But yeah, we can go for another 20 minutes.
You know, I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I've got a question here. Christian Identity says that, you know, we were the Israelites. The white race is the Israelites. We got the Adam's apple. We got the, you know, we've got the genetics here. And, of course, the Israelis even have found, the Khazarians have found that, you know, they're descended from the Khazar, which is was located right there where the Ukraine is, which gives you another whole insight into history. But the whole term. I wrote some science fiction 45 years ago about The star people, the gods, Lucifer, that whole thing, and I took a little bit different slant to it. Took a little different look at it. Don't believe that Lucifer was the bad guy they tried to make him out for, because and since this is the title of your next book, I really want your input on this. In my research, the whole term Yahweh, and in my science fiction book, the captain of the Earth ship Heaven, one of half a dozen created by the Atlanteans to preserve the technology and the knowledge of the Atlantean civilization before the flood. And they did have a worldwide civilization. We've got pyramids we can't build today on all the different continents all across the world. They had levitation, they had possibly anti-gravity, and I personally believe that's the way they built the pyramids. But the whole term Yahweh was basically another name for Moloch. And if you read the Old Testament, that loving God of Jesus, the God of Jesus doesn't seem to correlate with the God of the Jews, if the Christian identity is wrong, and the Edomites and the Canaanites were the evil ones, and their God Yahweh was telling them, go out and kill all the women, kill all the children, kill this, kill that, kill this. Sounds like the Old Testament reads like a real bloody battle, and that ties in with the whole Jewish character. So maybe you could kind of iron that out for me. Give me your viewpoint.
Yeah, well, my view, Clay, is that I think there's some confusion. I certainly see Yahweh as the true God, and Moloch and what have you as Satan and what have you. And yeah, you're absolutely right. In the Old Testament, this is what people struggle to understand, because in a lot of ways, you see, when they accept that the Jews and Israel are the Bible, they say, oh, this fits, because, you know, they're told by their God to kill these people and kill everything in the land, the women and the children, even kill the cattle at some points, they're being told. But they're being told this because these people are idolaters, and they are Jews, and they're told otherwise there'll be thorns in your side and pricks in your heels or what have you. If you don't do this, if you don't kill these people, then they'll come back to haunt you later. In the same way that that guy in the Ben Franklin said, you know, if you admit the Jews to this country, in 200 years you'll be slaves to them. And look what happened. Now, my point is that, yes, without a shadow of a doubt, I believe that the Israel of the Bible were encouraged and indeed did go out to kill other races there for the pure purpose that these other races were the satanic races. And you can trace all these, the Edomites, the Canaanites, etc. You can trace them back to Cain and that Jewish line, that satanic line, and unfortunately they've been allowed to explode out, and that's why I believe that there are a lot more Jews on the planet than say they are Jews. I often say that the first Rothschild, they'll talk about their 5 sons, but not about the 6 daughters. And, you know, I reckon that you've got the Bush family there, would have come from one of them, for example, and when you're talking about a generation with 5 sons, 6 daughters, back in, you know, 1790 or something they'd all been born by, then you can sort of imagine how many people would have generated out of that to this day. And they, with the first 5, they sent them to different banks around Europe. And so what did they do with the rest of them? You know, it's known that Mao Zedong was had all of these Jews surrounding him. Nelson Mandela had all these Jews surrounding him. Why, when Nelson Mandela came into power, did the Oppenheimer Diamond mines still exist. I thought that it was all supposed to go to the blacks, that they were taking over and they were going to take what was rightfully theirs. No, the Jews were still allowed to own all that, because all Mandela was communism. And, stupidly, the whites over there let the Jews manage, let the Jews survive and live in that country. And as a result, they financed Mandela in the same way you look at the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People, set up in the 1920s. They didn't have a non-Jewish president until 1970s. So this is the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People, and for the first 50 years of its existence, it's run by a Jew. What on earth have the Jews got to do with the advancement of coloured people when they're Jews? All they've got to do with it is that they want to, the Jews, they have a saying, their Mossad, by way of deception thou shalt do war.
That's right.
And that sums them up, because all they want to do is they don't want to get their hands dirty themselves, in the same way that they send the British over against their American brothers to kill and slaughter them, the same way that they've fomented the Civil War over there, the same way they're using American, British soldiers in Iraq, Afghanistan, coming back with horrific injuries, the ones that survive, all to benefit them. And it just goes on and on and on. And, so labouring back to my original point, my belief is that Yahweh, I'd have to really go through my book to actually point out individual verses, because I just simply can't remember all of them. But Yahweh is the name of the true God of the Bible. Satan comes in all forms like Moloch, Molech, the serpent. They talk about the serpent in the Garden of Eden, and then you have to, the way it works in the Bible is you read later on and it says, Satan, that old serpent, and then you realise that was Satan. It wasn't just a snake travelling along the ground that had sex with a woman and had children, and so a lot of the Bible is about, that's why you need a good concordance when you read it, because it will link things together for you.
Now, I just had a guest on, an archaeologist, who was there with Ron Wyatt, who knew Ron Wyatt, who found the blood of Jesus on the Ark of the Covenant buried beneath the place where Jesus was crucified. And Ron Wyatt said took scrapings of the blood on the Ark of the Covenant, took it to an Israeli lab, and they were blown away. This blood's alive. After 2,000 years, this blood's alive. It's but Jonathan Gray, the archaeologist, is the one who has documented the fact that we got a worldwide civilization here that was more further advanced in technology than we are today. And he also has just come out with, and I haven't completed reading it yet, he talks about Genesis in the Bible being the key, being the way that we can oppose these people. Now, throughout history, hundreds of countries have tried kicking out the Jews.
Yeah.
That didn't work because they just went to another country and started revolutions and started and came back again. They've done the same thing here. They divide and conquer is the oldest maxim in warfare, and so you got it in action right here. Since they control the media, whoa, you're a Republican? Well, I'm a Democrat. Oh, you're a conservative? Well, I'm a liberal. It is to divide us and keep us fighting among each other over inconsequential matters, instead of just simply asking why. Now, Congress was given the power to coin the money. Why are we paying a bank to do this? Why are we paying the Jews to do this?
Exactly. I mean, it's what people, and you hit the nail on the head there when you said they get us arguing about inconsequential things. That's exactly what they do. All the main things that you would think, Republicans are against immigration and Democrats are for immigration, and Republicans are against building up debt and Democrats are for it, for welfare and all that. If you look back over successive administrations, you will notice that there has been a steady increase in immigration, a steady increase in the lowering defences at the border, unless of course it involves you going on holiday somewhere or vacation somewhere, and then they'll be patting you all over if you're white, but they'll let all these Mexicans come over with anything, and then they'll start, if any border guards shoot them, then they'll prosecute the border guards. So it's pretty obvious what's going on.
I have gotten border guards out of prison. We held rallies so they didn't lose their homes. Jose Cambian and Nacho Ramos were put in jail for shooting a drug dealer in the ass. I put them on the cover of my magazine, took the magazine to every Border Patrol station, and told them, now, remember, boys, they did make a mistake. They did make a mistake. They shot him in the ass, aimed for the head. But it's they're doing more than just letting the illegals walk up here. They're putting them on trains. They're putting them on buses. They're putting them on airplanes and flying them all over this country. And that's the United States government that's doing that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't surprise me. We had something over here, what they're trying to do. I haven't heard about it for a while, but they had this idea that people on welfare, they were going to start spreading around the country. And it was because property prices in London, which is where most of the people, or all the big cities, London or Birmingham, what have you, and you tend to get the immigration tends to flock to the big cities because that's where they always gravitate to. And it was because they'd be able to give them, you know, when they paid rent for their property, it'd be cheaper to rent a property in different areas of the country, and that was the biggest crock I've ever heard. When I wrote my last two books, I was living in a place called Seaton, which was on the, I was literally on a cliff overlooking the channel to France. And I moved there for a variety of reasons, but one of them was the cheaper rent. I always wanted to live by the coast anyway, right on the coast, and do my writing, so it was cheaper living costs, and it was a quieter area. And it served its purpose, but what ostensibly you found there was the only non-white people were the owners of the Indian restaurant and the owners of the Chinese restaurant, and everyone else was white. And so what they want to do is the race mixing's working well for them in the cities, but they don't want suddenly there to be these pockets of white people around the country. So the idea is they'll start sending all the immigrants over to these different areas so they can breed with their children as well. So that's all this is about. You'll find that they'll be aiming these people at pockets of society. This is why I can never understand. I've seen it on the internet time and time again. People try and set up a white gated community and they just want white people living there, and the people that picket it are white people. Oh, that's racist, that's racist. You got, well, what business is it of yours if we build a few houses with a private road and we choose who lives there? It's none of your business whatsoever. But you just get in people, well, they look white, they're probably Jews saying that they're white, but I would just as likely think that they're white because they're idiots. They do the Jews' work for them because it amazes me that people are so keen to throw out the Bible, yet they'll believe the garbage that they're given in its place. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not jumping up to say either is right from this particular standpoint. What I'm saying is that people are so disrespectful to their ancestors by the way that they behave today, and they're disrespectful to their heritage, because they go back thousands and thousands of years, even if you can only trace your, right up to your grandfather, great-grandfather, whatever, grandmother. But the fact is that the majority of people listening to this will be pure white race, basically. And the amount that are quite prepared to go out of this race and of this generation and just, they were all wrong, I'm going to go and have a kid with a black woman or a black man or whatever. And I just think that is just so disrespectful, because you're just throwing all that heritage away in one generation, and all these others that have done more, that have built up America, for example, that's turned it into there was that, like in England, you had that point where the construction and things were all good, around about the 50s, shall we say, when things were just starting to tip, and then they started to have the civil rights and the push for immigration, the change from allowing immigration to be in accordance with the current white demographic into primarily non-white immigration and all that. It was at that point that you could see what the white races were capable of. And when they got it to that peak, and they got all those amazing buildings and all those constructed cities and farms and everything, that was when it's like, right, okay, this is when we invite everyone else in to ruin it. And the same thing happened in this country. And it happened at around the same time. They went through a different process. In America, it was largely the civil rights bill, desegregation of the schools, etc., because the blacks were already there. In Europe, what they did was they'd be bringing the blacks into all countries, and then England got the Pakistanis, France got the Algerians, Germany got the Turks, and it was all like finding, right, we'll put these different races in there, because they were never there for cheap labour or anything like that. That was just an incidental, but we may as well make use of them for something while they're there. What they're there for, and they've always been there for, is to breed the white race out. But they made a big mistake with those of Muslim faith, because you generally find that they stay within the faith, and if they do end up going off with a white woman, you'll see these peculiar looking white women walking around with headscarves on these white Muslims that have married a Muslim man, because he will never convert out of the Muslim faith, whereas the white race women will convert to it. And but it hasn't worked, and so really I think if they could have their time again, then they wouldn't have brought the Muslims into the Western world, because they haven't interbred as much as the blacks. So that's why when you look at your TV and I think one of your guests pointed out recently, all the sports stars are black, but all the cheerleaders are white girls. You know, it's showing, that's the ideal man, some big black buck. But and the same in the music, all the rappers are black. They never promote an Indian rapper or an Indian footballer or something like that, because they know that even doing that is going to be a waste of their time and money, because these people are still going to stay in their own Muslim communities, whereas the blacks, I mean, they can't believe their luck. They've suddenly got the chance to be with beautiful white women, and it's their first choice. You know, it used to be years ago that when you saw a white girl with a black guy, there was something wrong with her, which is why she ended up with them. You know, she might be overweight or unattractive or what have you. But now, it is positively the white girl's preferred choice to be with a black man. And that is proof in the pudding of how well it proves what the immigration was all about from the start.
Now, let me ask you something here. I'm going to play a little clip here. It's only a few couple of minutes here, and this is our president. This is our gay, our gay president, homosexual president, living with a transgender man as our first lady. And here's what he has to say. And it's taken out of context, supposedly, but he still says this.
And for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
Now, I am almost of the opinion, Andrew, that they're right. These elitists that say we're not smart enough to govern our own affairs, judging by the support, the amount of support and the amount of hate I get from so-called Christians, so-called patriots. Obama may be right about this. You're just too goddamn dumb to be governing yourself, because and as you pointed out, I believe on one of your websites, You can always tell who your rulers are by who you're not allowed to criticize. Well, Clay, you could just do so much better if you didn't talk about the Jews.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. But you see, what he's saying is he hasn't finished the story. People are largely stupid today, and the reason that they're stupid is because they're constantly lied to. They've been dumbed down. If you look at the education that I had at school and the education that you had at school, I would imagine that you had to work a hell of a lot harder to get your grades than I did for mine, because consistently they've dumbed down the school curriculum because they want to let all the other races compete. And they know exactly that it doesn't mean that every white person is more clever than every black man or anything like that, but they know, they've got their figures, they've got their averages. For example, intelligence is not based upon what you do, it's based upon what you can remember. And the Jews have got a great memory. You just need to see how they will wait over 100 years to kill a Tsar whose grandfather upset them at the Congress of Vienna to know that. And also you just need to see what they're doing now to the white nations in respect of them being kicked out of all the nations. But the reason that they are doing it is, as I've said, that they know that they're in a war on behalf of their father Satan against the white race, who are the children of their father's enemy God. And this is exactly what's happening. What Obama just said was quite clearly, people are too stupid. Yeah, because you made them that way. If you went out and you said, look, here's the protocol to the Arms of Zion, you go, and each of you in the class, you can take one protocol each, divide yourself into groups or whatever, this is your project, and come back with examples of each of those today. Then that's more learning, because you're identifying what's being said, and you could prove it. But no, they want to teach you about the phony holocaust. They want to teach you that we're all equal, which is laughable, because the Jews then claim to be God's chosen people. So which is it? Are we all equal, or are you God's chosen people? Their lies and deception are just overpowering, and this is why they're desperate to regulate and get control of the internet, and they're slowly chipping away. Funnily enough, recently, because I've never put advertising on my site. I've always been very much against it, but I never really get donations, so I don't sell that many books, and so I just looked into options of just putting something down the side, nothing that would get in people's faces. If they wanted to click on it, they could. I got turned down by Apple. I got turned down by the content of the website, and I got turned down by Google as well, because they basically said, oh, you can't have anything that has a go against a group or a proportion of a group, which, it's a very odd sort of state of affairs. But my point being is that this is like what you said about your friend who couldn't get work anywhere.
Right.
Because they cripple you economically.
I am blocked in every library. If you go into a library or Office Depot, or you work at Intel or Intuit, you cannot get the Free American on your computer. It is blocked.
Yeah. Same with me. Same with my site. And the thing is that, and you see, the thing is libraries are where people are supposed to go to learn, but they don't want you to learn what you and I put out, because they don't want you to learn the truth. They've, as far as they're concerned, they've won, and now they're just putting the finishing touches together. It's almost like, the villain at the end of a Bond movie. He thinks he's got rid of him, and then he's there sat enjoying a glass of champagne, and suddenly comes bursting through and kills the villain at the last minute. I think we're in that situation at the moment. We're the James Bond character while the bad guys are celebrating, and suddenly we're going to burst through, but we're not going to do it on our own. And this is another reason why, and I don't want this to be defeatist to people, but I honestly can't. Certainly in my country, for example, in America, at least you still have weapons. If we wanted to take on the government in this country, they say the police aren't armed. Well, most regular police aren't armed, but I've been a police officer for 4 years. I hated it. That was 2002, 2006, while I was putting this together. I started waking up to this, and as soon as I knew that I would have a book to do, I knew I wouldn't be allowed to do it staying in the police, because you're not allowed to express even a political opinion in the police, so you certainly couldn't put out a book that suggested that they were involved in the 7/7 bombings in London. But my point is that what's actually happening with people and with I believe from my point of view that it's really going to be some sort of divine intervention, or I don't know, something will happen, some virus will get released or something that just kills a lot of these bad people off. If we are to believe what the Bible says, it says that all the other races in the Israelite nations will be swallowed up by the ground. I don't actually see that the ground is going to open and they're just going to disappear into it. I think what that probably means is a virus will suddenly occur that only attacks certain strands of DNA. And so the white race survive in their own lands, but the non-whites and the offspring of the race mixing don't. But I believe that we're in those times. But then there are Christian identity pastors from the 1970s that swore that we were in those times, and they believed that it was Russia that was the Moloch, if you like, God, Magog, what have you. Of course, there was the big Jewish influence in Russia, but they didn't say the Jews so much as is being said today. I think that's really what keeps me going in a lot of ways. That I do believe that we are in these end times, if you like, it gives me more of a sense of faith, because I think to myself, how are we gonna? Unless, of course, the only other way I can see it is if there's an uprising in America where you still have weapons, and then that starts to spread around the world. And then some of the security forces start to come over onto our side, then it could happen in that way. So yeah, it could happen another way, but time's running out. They're trying their best at the moment to get your guns, and they're just doing it with one school shooting after another, after another, after another. So I guess it's just watch this space, Clay, you and I you work very, very hard with all your shows and your website and putting all your material out, and it's people like you and I that are really trying to fight this fight. But to show how evil these people are, they'll put people like Alex Jones out there, and you can always tell a finance site, in my opinion. If you look at some of these, the people at the forefront, if you like, the Alex Joneses and what have you, their sites always look a little bit similar, like they've been really professionally sort of done, and you can almost see, like if you go on some banking websites, you can see that the same people have designed them, they've got the same company doing them, and I've sometimes done that, gone from one mainstream alternative news site to another and seen the similarities on the way that they're set out, and you can say, oh yeah, it's by the same group, the same Jewish group.
Well, they've tried real hard to silence me, but I am working with companies overseas that aren't necessarily being controlled by them now. And I've got after 10 years, I brought the Free American back out again. I just cut out all the middlemen. I don't pay Hearst for the paper to print it on, and won't do that again until we get our hemp paper back out here in this country. We may have to bring that all, get that all from Colorado, since that's the only state that has legalized possession of marijuana, decriminalized marijuana. What really, again, this is the divide and conquer, from the days of reefer madness. They've tried to demonize the most beneficial plant on earth, and shipped it over to Russia, China, 10,000 products made out of hemp, and you got to buy it from Red China? Something wrong with that.
This whole thing, it was all to do with, I only understood recently that I knew that you could use it to power vehicles. I didn't realise that you could actually make vehicles out of hemp, plastic, and they'd be stronger than steel.
Yes, sir.
So I've heard that also, and then you can use it for clothing and everything. But you see, and then the other thing they have is they have all these rappers that sing about it. I want to get high, and hemp is an herb, man, and all that. Yeah, well, it is a herb. It's an herb that you just want to get high off. You know, you really expect me to believe that Cypress Hill's going to get up and start making fuel out of hemp? He'll be too stoned out of his mind to do it, and that's why you see that they've got all these people. I would say 90% of people, if you asked in America or the UK about hemp, could it produce anything other than marijuana to get you high, they'll say no, that's all it's for. They wouldn't know it's for anything else because they've done the people down so much. And it was only due to the fact that they didn't want people could start growing that themselves. And if they could grow that themselves, they could have their own fuel source. They wouldn't have to buy it all off the Jews that own the fuel.
That's right. I have had people say, well, Clay, isn't marijuana a gateway drug? I said, absolutely, if you got to buy it from a drug dealer.
Yeah.
You know, if you can grow it in your backyard, it ain't no gateway drug. It's simply a plant that God gave you. Bible refers to it as a plant of renown. And
yeah.
I in my book, Mystery Babylon, one of the reasons I got attacked, even before I started the Free American, before I started this radio show, I was publishing a biker magazine, and I got the story and published the story of George Bush's Operation Watchtower. That was his little drug smuggling operation. He sent the Special Forces, Colonel Edward P. Catolo, down to Colombia. And a friend of mine was with Colonel Catolo. His name was William Tyree. And they built the radio guide towers down there to fly 100 planes into Albrook Air Force Base in Panama. The cargo was cocaine.
Yeah.
And then that was thrown up by somebody else I just happened to know by the name of Barry Seal, who flew it up to a little protected airport, protected by the governor, a guy named Bill Clinton, and that airport was Mena, Arkansas.
Yeah, and we had all those people being Arkansided or whatever, wasn't it, by the Clintons, and about 50 or 60 people died all around them.
That's right.
I never delved into that very much. I really must read up on that. I think some people have put out books.
I'll be happy to trade you a Mystery Babylon for your Yahweh book. It's pretty interesting reading. I mean, this is the first time the CIA threatened me 25 years ago. We're gonna let you live this time, Clay, but don't do anything like that again. And then when I referred to 9/11 as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning, they did try to kill me.
Yeah. They basically engineered a crash. Did they engineer like a failure on the bike, or did they take you off the bike?
Yeah, I'm a real good rider, and I never saw it coming. I mean, the woman that hit me was didn't have any insurance. She was in a borrowed car, and she had drug charges pending, and she never went to jail. I never saw her in court ever. Of course, really? I wasn't conscious for 3 months, and my sons and my wife, they were convinced by the doctors that he may never be right again. You need to get long-term care. You make arrangements for long-term care. Get guardianship. Don't let him drive. Don't let him ride. Don't let him do radio. Don't let him do anything. Make sure he takes these drugs. Take this Depakote here. Take this Depakote. Give him that 2 or 3 times a day. Sorry, guys. I ain't taking no drugs. Only thing I need is a joint and a Harley. Thank you anyway. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this woman probably didn't even exist then. It was just put out there, someone that is always going to be difficult to trace. They've got hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people that they've got warrants out on that live those sort of lifestyles. No address, no job, no social security number, no charges on no insurance, all that. And these people are drifting in and out of society. So that was the perfect person that they could blame it on. But I'm pleased that you've recovered. It must have been terrible to have that length of recovery time, but you may have recovered quicker if they hadn't have pumped you through all those drugs. But you're a fighter, and you've come through, and you're still fighting them today, which is excellent, Clay, you know.
Well, I appreciate work like you. This is the reason I do this radio show, to have guests like you on that tell people the truth. And folks, if you're listening to this, you can get it down. You can pull it down off of freeamerican.com. You can click on Andrew's name, and that will take you to the Blog Talk site. You can save that as save it to your default player. That'll save it as an MP3 file on your computer, and you can pass it on. I mean, consider this the most blocked show on here. So what do you do? How do you resist this whole New World Order crap? It's by talking to your friends. Don't be ashamed. Don't be programmed. They don't call television programming for nothing. They really want to control the way you think, and you can't control the way I think, and obviously Andrew is one of those people that's not being controlled. We're just trying to give you the truth, and, you know, I tell people, Andrew, don't believe anything I say. Check it out for yourself, and if you check out everything we've said today, you'll find that we're telling you the truth. These people don't care about you. They don't like you. If you read what they say, what the Jews say, what the rabbis say, you're just cattle to them. That's all you are. And the cattle are easily controlled. They got their little cattle prods, and they got their little pens that they put you in. They put your thinking in the pens.
Yeah, and the name Goyim in Jewish, it means cattle, and that's what they call the white race. So, but also to let the listeners know, when you said about checking what we say for themselves, that's what I always say. And when I put the Synagogue of Satan together originally, the version that you had, the Tex Mars version, that was never meant to go out anywhere. I just sent it in an email to Dal Bradford Smith and said, look, I've been listening to your shows, I listened to a lot of other things, I watched different things, and I've come up with this timeline, you know, and he didn't get back to me, and it turned out he put it up on his site, and then there's a News of the Week piece, and then taken it down again. And then a few shows later he mentioned he put this thing up and taken it down, so I emailed him. He said, oh yeah, it was a News of the Week piece, what have you. And then he got, I don't think he knew much about websites. He got involved with another guy called Eric Hupschmidt, who started running his website, and he said, we put it up for permanently. And I said, well, there's only really a document that I was keeping, because I always say that so far we've had 100 deathbed confessions, people saying I killed Kennedy. They can't all have done it. There was definitely more than one shooter. That wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald, but I don't think there were 100. And my point being is that there's a lot of people out there that are spreading disinformation willingly, or they might be insane, so they're spreading it unwillingly. And until you listen and you read and you research the official story and then the different unofficial stories, because what they did after JFK, they had a system where they were going to refute every conspiracy theory, and then it got to a few years later, I'm not sure exactly when, they changed their policy, and what they decided was, instead of refuting every conspiracy theory, they'll bring out another 20 of their own. And so they'll bring out the official story plus 20 conspiracy theories, and so then the people that don't believe the official story have got so many conspiracy theories to choose from. I mean, it's largely accepted now. I think what happened on 9/11, it's people will largely accept now the Jewish involvement, but there are still people that will deny it, and they're the biggest groups, because they're the ones financed by the Jews. But they went from denial to promotion of conspiracy theories that they created themselves. And so what I did with my book for my own personal use was just write 19th Kennedy. He introduced the US note that was money printed by the US Treasury in competition with the Federal Reserve, and he also told David Ben-Gurion, who was first Prime Minister of Israel, he told him that he was not going to allow him to get nuclear weapons, and then within 3 months he was dead. And there are other aspects in there as well. But just to top and tail it very quickly, that was where I came from, my point issue. And I did that with all sorts of different things. And that book is up in its entirety for free to read. If people go onto our website, www.andrewcarringtonhitchcock.com, they will see the navigation bar along the top. You'll see one that says the Synagogue of Satan Plus. If you hover over that, the book is divided into 10 sections. That's 10 different groups of years. I think the first one is 740 AD to about 1800, and the last one is 2003 to 2006. And you just click on one of them. 8 of them have got YouTubes at the top where someone has done a YouTube video while the book is being narrated. That's the last 8. Or you can just read it through, and there's also interviews that you can click on at the top that I did with Darrell Bradford Smith on each section. So you can, what Clay just said about not believing up and checking the information for yourself, it's there, it's in timeline format. I'll give you the date, so you can pick. If you're not interested in something from 1800, go to a year that you're interested in, click on the relevant box, go to the year, and then have a look. And if you see a bit of information you haven't seen before, then try it on another search engine and see what you came out with. I was happy that to bring this book out, I kept all my sources, and I may try out multiple sources for each thing that I put in the book. I've never been sued, which is a shame, because I'd like to have it out with these people in court. But they wouldn't want to see me in court because they know that I can prove it. All they can prove is that they're liars who withhold news, and they'd rather feed us news about one celebrity having sex with another celebrity rather than what's really going on in the world. You know, they keep us doped up with their drugs and doped up with their media, and that's all that these people do. Because they've got control of the money and they've got control of everything, you know, we are a very, very small band. I think that we're the smallest, one of the smallest resistance movements in history, because you can't call us part of the truth seekers or part of the conspiracy community, because we're not. Because if people refer to them, they're referring to the Alex Jones and the David Icke that are just there to muddy the waters. We're the real truth area, and there's only a handful of us. You know, it's crazy. So we're so few and far between, and any network, sooner or later, it's like I'm doing a show later with Diana Spingola, and she just recently lost her prime slot on RBN, and you know, because of the sort of guests that she had, and then she had guests on and she wasn't allowed to have on again.
Yeah, I know John Stadmiller personally. He has taken me off of the show because he caters to the Jewish advertisers. And if they complain about me, well, he took me right off. And besides, I was there when he helped GCN steal all of the equipment from Mark Kornke. He worked for Mark Kornke. You know, so I mean, I've been there. GCN won't talk to me. I've been on. I've done shows for Jack McLam, who has now passed away. He was one of the real truth seekers. But you know, unlike Bo Greitz, who was at all the preparedness expos, and you know, I said, yeah, Bo tells you that he saved Randy Weaver. And that's true to a point, but you could also say he arrested Randy Weaver for the FBI, who was surrounded by the Montana militia. Yeah. So, you know, you've got so many of these people. They fund both sides of every conflict, and they've got their Alex Jones, who's well paid to do what he does and does a pretty good job of it. You know, propaganda. Good propaganda contains 90% of the truth. With Alex, it's the 10% he leaves out, and he wants to point the finger at the Nazis, and I believe that's actually justified if you think that, if you realize that the Nazis simply could have been the Ashkenazis. Yeah. That worked within Hitler the same way that they're working with Obama here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and just one final thing, so I'm going to have to wrap.
All right, sir.
My next one starts in 10 minutes, 12 minutes or something, but I've really enjoyed doing the show, Clay. So
I appreciate that.
We'll have to do it again sometime.
Anytime.
That's excellent. But just what you said on Alex Jones, you hit the nail on the head. 90% truth, 10% garbage, because it's that 10% that they get you on. And with David Icke, who I'm familiar with, he's English and what have you, and I followed him. I actually got to see him live in 1991. He came to my university, and he was talking about stuff then. That was my first exposure to this. I think that was before they got hold of him, but I'm not sure. He might have been working for the BBC all the way through. But his 10% is this business with reptilian shapeshifters. But one thing that he started doing, and I read his recent book, and there was so much out of that was very similar to what I'd put together in the Synagogue of Satan. Anyway, in his what he started doing is he started identifying Jews that he didn't do before, but he calls them Rothschild Zionists. He won't say the word Jew. And just to close to the audience on this point, people are always saying it's not the Jews, it's the Zionists, it's not the Jews, it's the Zionists. Okay, I'll tell you something. Zionism wasn't created until 1897 at the Zionist conference by Theodore Herzl. Okay, now in its concept it was probably around because I believe that the protocols are the minutes of that meeting. That's what I believe. Now, will someone tell me who these Jews were that got thrown out of countries for 1,000 years? Someone tell me who the Jews are that if you read the Magna Carta, which is the foundation, I believe, of American law as well as British law, we certainly use in American law, the only race mentioned on the Magna Carta are Jews. Jews must not do this, Jews must not do that. If a widow dies owing debt, Jews cannot extract this amount of money. Why? That was from about 12th century or something. So,
all right. I've got another call here. I know you've got another one to do. I'm going to let you go here. You're welcome back anytime, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clay. Bye-bye.
God bless.
You. Bye-bye.
Hello, 443. Hello, who are you?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Mr. Clayton Douglas.
You got him. You're also,
Mr. Douglas.
just let you know, you're also live on the air. I'm doing my worldwide radio show.
Okay. Well, Mr. Douglas, my name is Rhonda. I'm calling from the House Calls program with Care Improvement Plus, and I'd like to advise you this call is being recorded for quality control purposes.
Yes, and this call is being broadcast all over the world, so what can I do for you?
All righty. Well, Mr. Douglas, we were just giving you a call to get you scheduled for your House Calls visit with us as a part of your insurance plan. Are you familiar with that program at all?
Not exactly, no ma'am.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly glad to speak with you today. Just to give you a little bit of information, it's a fairly new program that we've added to your insurance plan. There's no additional cost, there is no copay, no charges. And we're just touching bases with our members to make sure that we're providing the best possible care.
Okay, is this the plan I got to get dental coverage on my Medicare or Medicaid?
I'm not sure what your plan details.
It was, I have Medicare and I have Medicaid, and they did not cover dental. I needed some dental work, so I signed up with United Healthcare, and that was this Care Plus, I guess, that you're talking about.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, sir, I don't know what your plan specifics are with regards to dental. I actually work specifically in the House Calls department, so I do know that as a member of Care Improvement Plus, you're eligible to receive this House Calls visit.
Okay.
At no additional
First of all, I don't need house calls. I don't need medication unless you support medical marijuana. I'm not interested in any pharmaceuticals. And I also got information. You told me I needed a primary care physician, and I've got one in Port Lavaca that I want to use, but she doesn't accept your program, and she says that your program, by signing up with your program, I've been taken off of Medicaid in Texas. If that's true, I will drop anything I got to do with your business, because I want to be able to go to whatever doctor I want, and I don't need to drive 40 miles to Victoria to see one of your approved doctors. I want to be approved to see the doctor of my choice in Port Lavaca. So you might check on all that and then get back to me when you're off of the air, because this is probably not doing your care service any good.
Well, sir, that's some information that they'll give me with regards to, your specific dental coverage. They would really want to be speaking to you as a member, so if you need to be sure of that, I can certainly get you over to speak with them.
Well, you can have them. You can have them call me after my show is over, and you might put a note there that it's not a good idea to call me between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock Central Time. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You can call me back in about 8 minutes. You can have somebody that knows what the hell I've got here and what we can do to call me back about that.
So the toll-free number that's on the back of your insurance card is...
I don't have an insurance card. You haven't sent me an insurance card yet, so call me back.
If you want to take our toll-free number, sir, do you have any questions at all?
I've got all kinds of questions. Give me the toll-free number.
It's 866-686-2504. That's the number direct to the house calls program.
All right. Thank you very much now.
About the house calls department.
All right. Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Well, okay. All right. What do we got here? I got 5 minutes. Folks, the July issue is out. The May-June issue is out, and the May issue is out. All three of those issues you can get off of shop.freeamerican.com, and you can get the magazines. If you want to read the whole Rothschild lineage, Mystery, Babylon, the New World Order Unveiled, got my whole story in there. Talks about Christian identity, talks about pretty much everything my guest and I talked about today. You should be able to do that. It's shop.freeamerican.com, and you can get the first 11 issues of the Free American free right now up on the site. We will be making some changes here very shortly. We will be we'll probably put up a subscription form for the magazines, for the radio show, as soon as a few things clear here. And I'm going to sign off now. We got about 4 minutes, but I am Clay Douglas. I believe I am your best hope. If you want somebody that's a warrior, somebody that took an oath and honors his oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, this ain't about hate. I don't hate no one. I've had friends that were Jewish, Aaron Russo, Jack Hara. They did great work. They had a few character flaws because they were loyal to their race. I'm loyal to mine. Mine happens to be Texan. See the sign there? Texas works. I am Texas. I was born here. Went through an airport once while I was with Charles Collins. They had a poster up showing what a Texan was in the Dallas airport. It could have been a picture of me. And I do ride a Harley with a cowboy hat, not a helmet. Thank you. I am Clay Douglas, and I appreciate you listening to me. I appreciate you sharing this. Tell people about this. Make a donation. you can go to freeamerican.com and make a donation. That helps keep me on the air, and if you're not doing it, you're not really doing it for me. You're doing it for you and your children and your neighbors and your family. God bless you. Thank you. Goodbye.